I never believed in anything paranormal. I'm not the kind of guy who jumps at shadows or blames creaks in the night on ghosts. If something weird happened, I wanted a real explanation. Bad plumbing, wind, electrical issues. I clung to logic like it was armor. But what happened that summer in 2019 at my cousin's house in West Virginia, well, it broke that part of me. I was 23, fresh out of college, broke, and unsure what to do with my life. My cousin Derek offered me a place to crash while I sorted things out. He lived outside of town, in this old rental farmhouse with peeling white paint and a sagging front porch, the kind of place that smelled like dust and history the second you walked in. Derek said the rent was cheap because nobody wanted to live there for long. He laughed when he told me that, but there was something in his voice that made me think he wasn't joking. The house wasn't massive, just 2 stories with a narrow staircase, creaky floorboards, and low ceilings upstairs. My room was at the far end of the hole. The wallpaper was faded and peeling. There were faint water stains on the ceiling, but it felt private enough. I figured it would do until I got back on my feet. The first week was normal. Derek and I stayed up late drinking beer, talking about our plans and watching old movies. Nothing strange, nothing off, except for one thing. The door to the guest room at the top of the stairs. Derek told me flat out not to use it. He said the landlord had boarded up the inside closet because the floor wasn't stable and it wasn't safe. Fair enough, I thought, but the more I walked past that room, the more I noticed the odd details. The door itself was newer than the others in the house, fresh wood, modern hinges, and unlike the other doors which never shut right, this one clicked perfectly into place, like it had been fitted recently. On my 3rd night there, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to footsteps in the hallway, heavy ones. I thought it was Derek getting a late night snack, but when I peeked out, the hall was empty. The only thing out of place was that the guest room door was wide open. I could see straight into it, but here's the thing. I'd never seen inside before. The light from the street lamp outside spilled in, just enough for me to make out the shape of a bed frame against the wall, a small dresser and a chair in the corner. It looked completely normal, like a room someone might have actually used, but Derek had told me it was off limits, dangerous even. And when I blinked, I swear I saw someone sitting in that chair, just for a second, a shadow that melted into the darkness when I squinted. I closed my door fast and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I told Derek what I'd seen. He laughed it off, said I must have been dreaming. He even walked me to the guest room door and showed me it was locked tight. He jingled the key ring on his belt and said, "See, only I have the key, you're safe." I wanted to believe him, but that didn't explain the footsteps. It didn't explain why I'd seen the door open. Over the next week, things got worse. Every night around the same time, I'd hear those footsteps, sometimes slow dragging, like someone tired, other times quick, almost frantic, always stopping outside my door. And every morning, the guest room door would be ajar, just a few inches. No matter how many times Derek swore he locked it, one night I couldn't take it anymore. Around 3 a.m., I yanked my door open the second I heard the footsteps. The hallway was empty, except the guest room door was wide open again. This time I saw more than just a shadow. There was a figure standing by the bed, not Derek, taller, thinner. Its face was blurred by the dark, but I could see its head slowly turning toward me. I slammed my door shut and pressed my back against it, heart racing so hard I thought I'd pass out. I didn't open it again until morning. Derek finally admitted something after that. He told me I wasn't the first to complain. Every tenant who stayed in that house before him said the same thing. Someone or something stayed in that room. People heard footsteps, whispers, saw figures. One family left in the middle of the night without ever asking for their deposit back. Derek said he never saw anything himself, but sometimes he heard the door slam at night when he was alone. He said he just ignored it, but I couldn't ignore it, because the next night, I woke up not to footsteps, but to breathing right outside my door, slow, heavy, and deliberate. I don't know what made me do it, but I whispered, "Hello?" The breathing stopped instantly. Then the knob on my door began to turn. The knob stopped moving, just as suddenly as it had started. I sat frozen on my bed, clutching the blanket like it was some kind of shield. I thought maybe I was imagining it again, that I'd wake up and laugh at myself for being paranoid. But then, from the hallway, came the soft creak of floorboards. Someone was moving away. I waited a long time before I cracked the door open. The hallway was still, silent, but the guest room door, wide open again, yawning into darkness. I couldn't bring myself to look inside. I just shut my door and leaned a chair under the knob, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, afraid of monsters. The next morning, Derek gave me this annoyed look when I told him what happened. He wasn't laughing anymore, though. He rubbed his face, tired, like he'd been carrying something heavy for years. "I didn't want to dump this on you," he said, "but you're not crazy. The house, it's off." He explained that the landlord never mentioned it, but the neighbors had warned him. Apparently decades ago, a boarder died in that guest room. The story was muddy. Some said it was a drifter who hung himself. Others claimed it was a farmhand who froze during the winter after getting locked inside. Whatever the truth, people swore that room was wrong. Derek admitted he'd heard breathing before too, sometimes even whispers, but he had convinced himself it was just in his head. "I just ignore it," he said. "It never hurts anyone." That wasn't exactly reassuring. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat up in bed with the lights on, staring at the door, waiting, and sure enough, right around 3 a.m., the footsteps came again. Slow, deliberate, they stopped outside my door. Then came the whispering. It wasn't clear words, more like murmurs, a jumble of syllables strung together, in a voice too low to belong to Derek. I leaned closer, straining to make sense of it, when something scraped across the wood, nails dragging down the door. I yelled, "Derek, stop screwing with me!" No answer, just silence. I threw the door open, ready to catch him in the act. The hallway was empty. The guest room stood open again, black as pitch. And that's when I saw it. In the chair by the window, someone was sitting there. Not a shadow this time, a figure. Its skin was ashen, stretched thin over its bones, and its head tilted unnaturally to one side, like its neck had been broken. The eyes were the worst part, completely white, no pupils locked on me. I stumbled backwards, slammed my door, and pressed my whole weight against it. The whispering grew louder from the other side, angry now, almost frantic. The knob rattled like it was being shaken. I screamed Derek's name until I heard him pounding up the stairs. When he reached me, everything stopped. The knob went still. The whispers died. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, wide-eyed. When I opened the door again, the hallway was empty. The guest room door was closed. Derek finally looked scared. Not annoyed, not dismissive, scared. He admitted he'd never seen anything himself. He thought it was just an old house with bad history, making people's minds run wild. But now he was pale, trembling, staring at that locked door like it might burst open. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, we called the landlord. Derek asked straight out if anyone had ever died in the house. The landlord went quiet for a moment before saying, "Lots of people have lived there. I don't keep track of every death." His tone was cold, defensive, like we'd crossed a line. That night, Derek said we'd sleep downstairs in the living room. Safety in numbers. We dragged blankets to the couch, tried to distract ourselves with a movie. For a while, it worked, but sometime after midnight, the TV flickered and went black. The lamp in the corner dimmed until the room was bathed in shadows, and then came the sound of the guest room door slamming upstairs. We both froze. The slam came again, louder. Then footsteps running across the second floor, heavy and fast, back and forth. "Jesus Christ," Derek whispered. His face was pale as paper. We didn't move. We just listened as something pounded against the walls, the floors, even the staircase. It was chaos, like a storm trapped inside the house. And then, as quickly as it started, silence. We sat in the dark, too afraid to move. Hours crawled by. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I must have dozed off. When I woke up, the sun was up, and the house looked normal again. Derek was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, eyes bloodshot. "We need to leave," he said. But we didn't. Rent was cheap, and neither of us had money to go anywhere else. Derek tried to lap it off again, called it the house's way of hazing new tenants. But the look in his eyes told me he didn't believe it. And then came the night that proved this wasn't just a haunting. It was something worse. I woke up in the living room to the sound of footsteps, not upstairs this time, but right behind the couch where I was lying. Slow, deliberate steps, moving from one side of the room to the other. I held my breath, too afraid to turn around. Then, a voice whispered right in my ear, clear as day, "You're already mine." I shot upright the second I heard those words. My skin felt like ice. My throat locked tight. Derek was asleep in the recliner across the room, snoring softly, which only made it worse, because whatever whispered to me wasn't him. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed. If I looked, I'd see it right behind me. Instead, I jumped up, nearly tripping over the blanket, and shook Derek awake. What is it?" he mumbled. "There's something in here," I hissed. It spoke to me. He frowned, still half asleep, but then his eyes darted past me. His face drained of color. I spun around. The far corner of the room was darker than it should have been, like the shadows had thickened into something solid. At first I thought it was just the way the light fell, but then it moved. A tall figure stepped out of the corner. Same broken tilt of the head, same ashen skin, same white eyes, only now I could see its mouth, a black gash that stretched too wide, peeling into a grin. Derek scrambled up. "We're leaving, now." We bolted for the front door, but the second Derek grabbed the knob, it wouldn't turn. The lock wouldn't budge, like the metal itself had warped. Behind us, the figure dragged one long hand across the wall, leaving black streaks that smoked like burnt wood. I lost it then. I grabbed a chair and hurled it through the front window. Glass exploded outward, spraying the porch. We didn't wait. We climbed through the frame, cutting ourselves on shards, and sprinted into the yard. The night was thick and still. No wind, no sounds of crickets. Nothing, just silence pressing down on us. We ran until we hit the gravel road. My chest was burning, lungs begging for air, but I didn't stop, not until the house was out of sight. We ended up at the neighbor's place a mile down. An older woman answered, robe tied tight, eyes narrowed when she saw us bleeding and panting on her porch. "You've been in that house," she said flatly. Not a question. A statement. We nodded, both of us shaking. She sighed like she'd seen this before, and let us in. She gave us towels, water, and sat us at her kitchen table. That's when she told us what nobody else had. "That place has always had something in it, long before your landlord bought it. They say a man used to rent the upstairs room back in the 40s. A quiet man, no family, no friends. One day he just stopped coming out. When they finally opened the door, they found him in that chair by the window. Said he'd been dead for weeks." She lowered her voice, but people swore they still saw him afterward, sitting in the window, walking the halls at night. My own father said he saw him cross the road one evening and vanish into the woods, Derek and I just stared at her. "Why doesn't anyone tear it down?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question. "Wouldn't matter. You can't tear down what isn't nailed to the wood." That was the last straw for me. The next day I packed up everything I owned and left. Derek stayed behind for a while, said he couldn't afford to go anywhere else. We fought about it, but I wasn't sticking around to watch whatever that thing was claim him. I moved 3 states away, crashed on a friend's couch, and tried to forget it. But forgetting doesn't work when something like that breathes in your ear, because it didn't stop. A month later in my friend's apartment, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of floorboards creaking in the hallway. My heart sank. Slowly, I turned my head toward the doorway. The guest room door across the hall, her guest room, not mine, was wide open. And sitting in the corner chair was the same figure, head tilted, white eyes staring, grinning. I screamed so loud I woke the whole building. When they rushed in, the room was empty. No footprints, no marks on the walls. My friend thought I'd had a nightmare. I wanted to believe her, but I knew better. It had followed me. Over the next few weeks, it happened again and again. Sometimes just whispers at night, sometimes the slow twist of a doorknob. Once, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror smiling back at me when I wasn't. I realized then, it hadn't been Derek's house that was haunted. It was me. I stopped telling people about it after a while. Nobody believes you when you say a dead man has claimed you. They think you're unstable, maybe dangerous, but I can't ignore it anymore. Last night I woke up to find my bedroom door wide open, and sitting in the chair across from my bed was the hollow guest. And this time it spoke again. Not a whisper, not a threat, just a promise. Soon. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. If I disappear, if I'm found in some chair with my head tilted and my eyes white, just remember this. I told you the truth.